So, Scaramouche, huh? Or Wanderer? Welcome! 3.3's Archon Quest interlude is sure to be a doozy, especially since we have one of the most fascinating and questionable characters in existence to play as our main stars. But before we begin, thank you to OperaGX for sponsoring this video. OperaGX is a browser built specifically for gamers. If you've ever needed a browser to run when you're playing games or finishing schoolwork you clearly never do, then OperaGX is just for you. This is my personal favorite browser because of its customizable features and the fact that I get to keep all my tabs open but sorted nevertheless. If you want to make your browser feel more like yours, OperaGX comes with animated wallpapers and customizable themes that let you change the color of your headers and your sidebars. They have a great assortment of backgrounds and colors that you can choose from, so go right ahead. And if you're like me that likes organizing my stuff, or alt-tabbing as quickly as I can the moment that somebody goes in my room, OperaGX also comes with workspaces. They're just little things and folders at the side of your screen that help you categorize and group your tabs together, and you can change back and forth with just a press. And if you don't want too many things running at once, or you don't want to slow down your browser because of all the unnecessary tidbits, OperaGX comes with the GX Cleaner. Just click Start Cleaning and it'll clear unnecessary caches, cookies, tabs, and browsing history. And for the last and personally most favorite feature, the fact that OperaGX comes with a built-in Forced Dark Mode. I usually browse websites that don't come with the dark mode version, so I just get blinded by the light, and let me tell you, it's not a fun experience. So finally being able to see is my favorite feature of them all. Nevertheless, so download OperaGX today with the link down below in the description or the pinned comment, and tell me what your favorite feature of the browser is. And thank you to OperaGX for sponsoring this video. Now let's get back to Scaramouche. Oh boy, the Sumeru Archon Quest just keeps on giving, huh? Before I begin with the hat, man, can I just say that Sumeru has delivered so hard with its story, from its protagonists and its storytelling beats to its recurring characters? Like, it's such a beautiful development that I really am curious what's going to happen in the next few patches. But regardless, I want to focus on the tale of the Balladeer and the strange connection that he's about to have with Irminsul. Because today, I want to propose a theory that Scaramouche will erase the traces of him being the Balladeer and Kunikuzushi as a final act of defiance against Sotore and the delusion planted in him. But the twist is that he and the Traveler don't forget about Scaramouche and the world will simply readjust itself. Disclaimer: this video will not be talking about any leaks and I've stayed clear of them like the plague. Being honest, it's a really big gamble for me to make a video that could possibly be obsolete in a few days, but that's fine really. We're doing it for Scaramouche. The intention of this video is for me to share my initial thoughts and then go back in a few months to laugh at how unequivocally wrong I was. Hey, that's the fun of that. Anyways, let's begin. I want to preface this video with the important themes introduced in the live stream so that we're all on the same page. These are what we currently know from in-game texts. First is that Scaramouche's story will connect with the Tatarasuna incident, and that what happened in the past was allegedly sabotaged according to Nahida. Second is that the Tatarasuna incident is connected to the several smithing arts of Inazuma, given that the description of the Mikage furnace is a blast furnace used to produce a steady stream of high-quality jade steel for Inazuma. Third is that whatever Scaramouche is facing, it has something to do with the Irminsul. Now let's break down this theory with all of its claims. First is that the theme of erasure between Scaramouche and the Tatarasuna incident. Scaramouche's story follows a lot of themes of blankness and wiping one's identity in pursuit of another, as we see him time and time again relinquish his old identity in search for a new one. He's a character that was known as a blank slate before being found by the Fatui. You can actually describe him as a young child that is simply adapting to the world around him. But the theme of erasure is more prevalent with how the Fatui eradicate information about Tatarasuna. According to the lore that we have in the game, notes and information pertaining to Tatarasuna have been continuously purged by the Fatui spies for unknown reasons. The first instance of Fatui purging information is with the rather aged notes scattered around the Mikage furnace. The descriptions of this note are that they seem to have been plundered during a recent raid on the Fatui. The age of these notes has made the words difficult to recognize. The notes depict the story of Inspector Mikoshi Nagamasa and his men smithing in the furnace when they came across a nameless eccentric. Sir Katsuragi, a kind young deputy, would eventually befriend this eccentric. However, there was an incident involving Nagamasa and Katsuragi in which the latter had committed a misdemeanor, and Nagamasa flew into a rage and slashed Katsuragi. However, the notes state that while Katsuragi committed something vile, it was out of the goodness of his heart. I won't theorize further into the full incident given that I've already given it some thoughts during the Kunikozushi breakdown, but I want to investigate the erasure of said information. The rate that the Fatui would go through to erase existing information on not only the nameless eccentric, who would eventually grow into the 6th Fatui Harbinger, but also the incident involving Nagamasa and his men is somewhat curious. And the fact that Nahida says that Tatarasuna was sabotage would mean that something or someone was pulling the strings of not only Katsuragi's alleged misdemeanor, but also Nagamasa's murder of his own worker. Moving on, there is another instance of plundering information about the blacksmiths. The Raiden Gokuden murders were alluded to in the 2.3 Husk of Opulent Dreams, and formally discussed in Kazuha's story quest in the 2.6 Irodori Festival. According to the lore, the Raiden Gokuden were blacksmithing schools, each specializing in their own unique styles. However, due to mysterious incidents, all but the Amenoma art survived, while the Ishin art barely held onto its lifeline. The other arts, as far as we know, disappeared completely. We also know that another blacksmith of the Ishin art traveled to Snezhnaya after failing to live up to the Raiden Shogun's expectations, only to die a mysterious death and leave behind a sword. We would soon learn in 2.6 it was because of the Fatui's intervention that the other arts were completely wiped, with Scaramouche barely ending on the Ishin art. We would also learn that the information regarding the Balladeer and the incident were attempted to be removed by the Fatui after the Balladeer's alleged betrayal, as told by Ayato, who found a mysterious Fatui spy enter the warehouse that stored the Kaidahara materials. The Fatui spy was most likely searching for the letter that is currently with Kazuha that served as evidence that the Fatui were involved in the murders. Quick side note, but now that Kazuha has the letter and that Kazuha is trying to revive the Ishin art and has access to the cursed sentient sword, do you think the Fatui would go after him? Bruh. Man's is trying to live his best life and now he's about to get caught up in some Fatui business he has no part of. Kazuha's life just sucks, you know? Like, he just wants to sleep on a rock all afternoon. Sucks to be him. Anyway, moving on. But the question is, why? Why would the Fatui go through all the lengths to remove every trace of not only the Balladeer's involvement, but also sabotage and eliminate Inazuman blacksmithers? Well, let's move on to the next claim. The next claim is that the Jester and the Tore were the ones that were ordering the erasure of the blacksmiths in order to monopolize the creation of god weapons, with Scaramouche being an extension of that plan with the destruction of the Raiden Gokuden. It's possible that the Fatui are trying to capture and cripple the blacksmithing area of Inazuma in order to understand more about the weapons that are capable of masterful divinity. Consider this. The expedition description refers to the sub-era of Tatarasuna as the center of the shogunate's weapon production. Furthermore, we know that imbuing weapons with divine essences are possible in Inazuma if we look at the blueprints that Scaramouche allegedly sabotaged. We don't know to what extent these were sabotaged, but thanks to the wonderful people in the Genshin Impact Wiki found them, they provided translations of what the labels mean, and one of them is Shoka Kotsuzui, which is crystal marrow. Furthermore, crystal marrow is a mineral that contains the power of the Tatsuragami, or the residue of Orobashi's power. The weapon that Kazuha receives is capable of controlling its victims, and it was forged somewhere in Snezhnaya. The blade itself is delusional and radiates an energy similar in color to the Tatsuragami. Kazuha points out that the power of the Tatsuragami lies in intensifying existing obsessions, meaning that this blade and other prototypes under the Ishin art may have been confiscated by the Fatui. The potential strength of cursed weapons is absolutely terrifying and fascinating, but there's no guarantee that the Inazumans were able to do this. It is actually much more plausible that the Fatui's technology is what imbued the sword with its own consciousness, which is why I believe that the Fatui are not only sabotaging existing smiths, but also making sure that no one else would be able to reach this level of creation, especially since most of them are dealing with crystal marrow. Now, the reason I believe that Scaramouche isn't a main player is because of how his Husk of Opulent Dreams framed the incident. The wordings frame it like one of the reasons that Scaramouche stops in the first place is because of what he learns from the Tore, and that the reason that Scaramouche went on to killing wasn't because of some innate grander purpose, but because of revenge. While it isn't the shallowest of reasons, we need to understand that the magnitude of his actions could have had a much more practical reason. Crippling one core aspect of Inazuma's strengths can send a nation into jeopardy, and I'm surprised that he didn't state revenge against his own mother as one of the reasons. Therefore, it's possible that Scaramouche wasn't the initial perpetrator of this plan, but was roped along by Dottore. Dottore, who would have been smarter and more knowledgeable about the practical purposes of seizing Inazuma's creation of possibly divine shogunate weapons, and just used Scaramouche's anger and ire towards the incident in Tatarasuna to manipulate him into doing the dirty work for him. Almost like what happened in Sumeru when Dottore gets to clean his hands but Scaramouche is a test subject. It really shows that while they're both powerful entities, the power dynamic between both of them is a chasm wide. I also believe that the Jester had something to do with this because the Jester has been involved in other cases with the Tatarigami. The release of the Tatarigami prior to the Inazuma Archon quest was a prerogative given by Piero, and Dottore addresses the Jester in the trailer. And the next point is less of a claim but more of a realization. Scaramouche himself was an asset, not a harbinger. There's something sad about this fact that I've come to realize. Scaramouche, for all of his existence, seems to simply be an extension of Dottore's creations. Scaramouche's electro powers were unsealed by the Fatui, and he was the false god that was created by Dottore in the sages. I actually find it possible that he rose to the title of Harbinger not because he deserved it, but because that was the best way to keep him in check, amused, and preoccupied. If Scaramouche felt that he was given power over other people, then Dottore would have no reason to truly check up on him. Besides, the way that Dottore refers to his abilities as utility should give us insight in the fact that Dottore, and possibly even the other Harbingers, see Scaramouche as nothing more of an extension of mechanical power. Nothing more, nothing less. I mean, no one ever truly liked him, even his own Harbingers. In the end, he really is just nothing short of a puppet. But I think realizing this fact is what would make Scaramouche relinquish that aspect of his life. The time that he gained the delusion, and the time that he became the balladeer. The next claim is that Scaramouche will meet the Phantom Self. This is where we will dive into the potential story of the Archon Quest interlude. Scaramouche's healing will have something to do with the Irminsul, or at least an apparition of it that we've never actually seen before. Unlike the other Irminsul we encountered, this one feels more geometric. It's possible that this is a reinterpretation of the Irminsul based on Scaramouche's consciousness as a mechanical god, but what I find fascinating are the parallels that this has with A's story quest part 2. While A planted her tree, Kunikuzushi already has his. But I want to introduce a fascinating story that I believe will come into play during the Archon quest. What he saw in his dreams was a phantom dancing to the music under the moonlight, just like the young man in the distant past, who was akin to a blank sheet of paper, and like a pure yet fragile persona, emerging once the resentment and suffering had dissipated. The wanderer did not know that he had any faculties for dreaming, thinking that this must have been that researcher's little trick, or perhaps it was the infinitesimal resistance of that bygone heart. You once acquired the heart that you always dreamed of, but it was but a mere prop for lies and deception. Now, you will finally obtain what belongs to you, and this false construct of a body can at last aspire to power over this world. Yet, this is all but a fleeting dream of glory, and it will all one day drift away amidst the sighs of a suffering earth. Was it a him from the past who said this, or him from the future? The vagrant cared not. The reason I theorize that Scaramouche will find a way to erase the existence of the past is because of 3 reasons, or more specifically, his motivations as a character. One is to spite Dottore, for one last time, by purging all of the knowledge about Tatarasuna and every known knowledge that he has gained as a balladeer into oblivion. Second is to free himself from the pain of the past and the lies given to him by the delusion. And third is to effectively reseal the original power given to him by A. The reason I believe this is important is because there needs to be a reason that he doesn't use his electro powers anymore, and why he reverts away from being the balladeer and assumes the identity of wanderer. By breaking the shackles of the past, he is essentially becoming free. I don't know how he'll do it, like if he'll battle himself, similar to how A does it. I mean, that's what we see in the trailer, but we do know that he needs to find a way to rewrite his history if he so wishes to erase the balladeer in Kabukimono. Also, a tidbit about what kabukimono means. According to Wikipedia, the term kabukimono is often translated into English as strange things or the crazy ones, a possible allegory to Scaramouche being known as an eccentric. The word kabuki is also the origin of the kabuki theater, the theater in which kunikuzushi comes from. This gives us the time period that Scaramouche is willing to erase. This is most likely after the death of the Tatsuragami child, or the third betrayal as he calls it, up until his actions in present time. But the reason this is an iffy assumption is because of the massive implications this can have to the state of the story. If Scaramouche finds a way to erase history within that time frame, what happens? This is something that I'm genuinely curious about. What would the people remember? We've seen this interaction happen with A during her story quest, where history can rewrite itself based on actions taken in an unknown point of history. But that was done with the help of the God of Time. But let's assume that that is what happens, that by some divine intervention, the contents of time adjust to the point that the false god is written out of the picture. The sages would simply be known for their conspiracy against Lord Kusanali, but the creation of the balladeer would be removed from existence. The last piece of the puzzle is simply how would the Wanderer come to be? Would Scaramouche also remember Kabukimono and the balladeer? This one is something that I've been considering a lot. A part of me wants to say that he does, though. The Wanderer's brash personality wouldn't really be justified if the nameless eccentric's old personality was much more timid and curious. A lot of the battle lines that we hear would not make sense if the Wanderer doesn't know about his divinity or his previously powerful existence. A really good quote that considers the idea that the Wanderer is simply Scaramouche's time reflecting is that he says he'll take some time for himself now. So it's possible that Scaramouche remembers the past, but wants to leave it all behind because Wanderer is now his third act. Now, the limitations of this theory. One is that this theory assumes that Scaramouche can even control this Irminsul in the first place to the point of rewriting history. If this Irminsul is actually his inner consciousness and not a real Irminsul connected to the timelines, then this theory falls flat. It's actually even more plausible that he just erases the memories from himself rather than the world. This is him going through a factory reset by provoking his own amnesia. The problem with this theory is the potential holes it can have with interactions with the Fatui. The Fatui still remembering the balladeer would mean that they would eventually cut him down, or worse, convince him to join their side. The Wanderer's seemingly brash and childish personality still takes root in Scaramouche's core, questionable moments. Now, I also want to discuss the part about Dottore. I will admit, Dottore's role in all of this is actually quite perplexing. I actually don't think that Dottore's plan is fully realized yet, and his main motivation for making Scaramouche as a god won't be completely revealed here, but instead in another part of the story. I actually also think that going against Dottore would be a really good move from Kunikuzushi. But the question is, why would Dottore dispose of Kunikuzushi in the first place? Well, my guess is that he's a hazard to all the information that exists in the Fatui. In the wake of Scaramouche trying to find himself, Scaramouche would eventually try to trace his entire existence in the Fatui to the Doctor. Hell, it's even more possible that the delusion, the mere prop for lies, is the very reason that Scaramouche rebels against Dottore. It's possible that it's with Nahida's help in clearing the thoughts given to him by the delusion that Scaramouche realizes his position and tries to rewrite his history. But that's it for me. Again, this is all just my shallow and surface speculations that have little to no lore backing, so I'm not too worried if I'm wrong. I haven't really seen any leaks or anything, so if this video is obsolete, then it's obsolete. It is what it is, I guess. But I'm so excited for Scaramouche nevertheless. Also, a final thanks to Opera GX for sponsoring this video. Download the browser now in the link below, and my name is Aster, and thank you for chilling with me. Woo! 3.3!